Welcome to War Bioses, the podcast that delves into the lives of history's most fascinating military figures. I'm your host, General Biography, and today we're going to explore the captivating life of Mark Antony, one of ancient Rome's most iconic leaders. From his early years as a member of the Roman nobility to his eventual rise as a powerful general and statesman, Mark Antony's story is a complex tapestry of politics, passion, and warfare. As we step into the world of ancient Rome, imagine the sounds of clanging swords, the smell of freshly baked bread wafting through the streets, and the vibrant colors of the Roman Forum. It was here, in this tumultuous city, that Mark Antony was born around 83 BCE, the son of Marcus Antonius Creticus, a Roman consul and admiral who had made a name for himself in the wars against the pirates of the Mediterranean. The Antony family, though part of the Roman nobility, were not among the most prominent or wealthy families. This relatively modest background would have a profound impact on Mark Antony's early life and career, as he would have to rely on his own abilities and connections to make a name for himself. As a young boy, Mark Antony would have received a traditional Roman education, studying Greek, Latin, and rhetoric, as well as being trained in the martial arts and athletics. He would have spent hours practicing with swords, javelins, and shields, honing his physical strength and agility. His family's relatively modest means meant that he may not have had the same level of access to the best tutors or training facilities as some of his more affluent contemporaries, but his natural abilities and charisma would soon make him stand out. Growing up in Rome during the late Republic was a tumultuous experience. The city was plagued by corruption, violence, and political instability, with powerful factions and individuals vying for control. Mark Antony's father, Marcus Antonius Creticus, was a member of the Optimates, a conservative faction that sought to maintain the traditional power of the Roman Senate. However, his early death in 74 BCE, while on campaign against the pirates, left Mark Antony and his family without a powerful patron or protector. The loss of his father would have had a profound impact on Mark Antony's life. He was just a teenager at the time, and the absence of a strong male figure would have forced him to rely on his own wits and resources to navigate the treacherous world of Roman politics. His mother, Julia, played a crucial role in shaping his early life and career. She came from a prestigious family, the Julii, who were related to the famous general and statesman Julius Caesar. This connection would later prove to be instrumental in Mark Antony's rise to power, as he would form a close alliance with Caesar that would change the course of Roman history. As Mark Antony entered his teenage years, he began to make a name for himself in Rome. He was known for his exceptional physical strength, bravery, and charisma, which made him a natural leader among his peers. However, he was also notorious for his reckless behavior, womanizing, and heavy drinking, which would become hallmarks of his later life. These contradictions, between his noble birth, natural abilities, and self-destructive tendencies, would define Mark Antony's character and shape his future path. One can almost imagine the young Mark Antony walking through the streets of Rome, his broad shoulders and chiseled features turning heads as he went about his day. He was a man who commanded attention, and his presence was impossible to ignore. But beneath the surface of this confident exterior, Mark Antony struggled with his own demons. He was driven by a desire for power, for recognition, and for acceptance, which would often lead him down a path of destruction. The early years of Mark Antony's life were marked by a series of significant events that would influence his development as a leader. The Third Mithridatic War, which lasted from 73 to 63 BCE, saw the Roman general Pompey the Great emerge as a dominant force in the Mediterranean. The seeds of his future successes and failures were sown in these formative years, as he navigated the treacherous landscape of Roman politics, forged alliances, and began to develop the skills that would serve him well on the battlefield. As Mark Antony entered his early 20s, he began to make a name for himself in Roman politics, navigating the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined the late Republic. In 63 BCE, he served as a cavalry commander under Julius Caesar during the Gallic Wars, where he distinguished himself through his bravery and tactical prowess. This marked the beginning of a long and complex relationship between the two men, with Caesar becoming a mentor and patron to Mark Antony. The experience gained during this campaign would later prove invaluable, as Mark Antony developed the military skills that would serve him well in his future conquests. The rugged landscape of Gaul, with its dense forests and rolling hills, provided a proving ground for Mark Antony's martial abilities. He quickly demonstrated a keen sense of strategy, often taking the initiative to outmaneuver enemy forces and secure key victories. Caesar, impressed by Mark Antony's prowess, began to entrust him with increasingly important commands, allowing him to hone his skills in the heat of battle. The bond between the two men grew stronger as they shared a deep understanding of the art of war and a passion for expanding Rome's dominion. In 60 BCE, Mark Antony returned to Rome and was elected as a tribune, a position that allowed him to advocate for the rights of the common people. However, his tenure was marked by controversy as he clashed with the Optimates, a faction of conservative senators who opposed Caesar's growing influence. The Optimates, led by the likes of Cato and Cicero, saw Mark Antony as a populist demagogue, using his charisma to whip up support among the masses. Despite these challenges, Mark Antony remained committed to his principles, using his oratory skills to rally the people behind him. The complexities of Mark Antony's personality were on full display during this period, as he navigated the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that defined Roman politics. As he once said to Caesar, "I am a soldier, not a politician," highlighting his preference for action over rhetoric. Despite this, Mark Antony proved himself to be a skilled diplomat, able to forge alliances and negotiate with rival factions. His relationships with contemporaries like Cicero and Brutus were complex and multifaceted, marked by periods of cooperation and conflict. In 54 BCE, Mark Antony returned to Rome and was elected as an augur, a priest who interpreted the will of the gods through divination. This position allowed him to strengthen his ties to the Roman aristocracy and to further his own ambitions. However, his election was not without controversy, as he faced opposition from the Optimates who saw him as a threat to their power. The augurate, with its sacred rituals and arcane traditions, provided Mark Antony with a unique platform to showcase his piety and devotion to the Roman state. The death of Crassus in 53 BCE marked a significant turning point in Mark Antony's career, as the first triumvirate began to fracture and Caesar's power grew increasingly dominant. Mark Antony found himself drawn into a bitter struggle for control of Rome, with Caesar on one side and the Optimates on the other. As the conflict escalated, Mark Antony would find himself at the forefront of the battle, using his military skills to defend Caesar's interests and to further his own ambitions. The years that followed were marked by intense violence and political upheaval, as Mark Antony navigated the treacherous landscape of Roman politics. In 49 BCE, he served as one of Caesar's generals during the Civil War, playing a key role in the Battle of Pharsalus, where Caesar defeated his rival Pompey. The victory cemented Caesar's position as the dominant force in Rome, and Mark Antony found himself rewarded for his loyalty with a series of prestigious appointments. As Mark Antony's star continued to rise, he became increasingly embroiled in the intrigue and backroom politics that defined ancient Rome. His relationships with contemporaries like Cicero and Brutus were complex and multifaceted, marked by periods of cooperation and conflict. Despite these challenges, Mark Antony remained a key figure in Roman politics, using his charisma and military prowess to build a powerful coalition of allies and supporters. The events of 44 BCE would prove to be a defining moment in Mark Antony's career, as Caesar's assassination sent shockwaves throughout the Roman world. Mark Antony, who had been a loyal supporter of Caesar, found himself at the center of a bitter power struggle as he navigated the complex web of alliances and rivalries that emerged in the aftermath of Caesar's death. The funeral oration he delivered for Caesar, in which he famously declared, "O mighty Caesar, dost thou lie so low?" would become one of the most famous speeches in Roman history, cementing Mark Antony's reputation as a skilled orator and a master of rhetoric. As the Roman Republic teetered on the brink of collapse, Mark Antony emerged as one of the dominant figures in Roman politics, using his military skills and charismatic leadership to build a powerful coalition of allies and supporters. The years that followed would be marked by intense conflict and political upheaval, as Mark Antony navigated the treacherous landscape of ancient Rome, forging alliances, negotiating with rival factions, and fighting battles that would shape the course of Roman history. Mark Antony's rise to power was not without its challenges, however. He faced opposition from powerful senators like Cicero, who saw him as a threat to the traditional values of the Roman Republic. The Optimates, still reeling from Caesar's death, viewed Mark Antony with suspicion, seeing him as a potential tyrant who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Despite these challenges, Mark Antony remained committed to his vision for Rome, using his military prowess and diplomatic skills to build a powerful coalition of allies and supporters. His relationships with other key figures, like Octavian and Cleopatra, would play a crucial role in shaping the course of Roman history as he navigated the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined the ancient world. As Mark Antony's career continued to unfold, he found himself increasingly entangled in a complex web of alliances and rivalries that would ultimately lead to his downfall. The once mighty Roman general, who had fought alongside Julius Caesar and later become one of the most powerful men in Rome, was now struggling to maintain his grip on power. His relationship with Cleopatra, the enigmatic queen of Egypt, became a defining aspect of his later years, as the two formed a powerful partnership that would shape the course of Roman history. The streets of Alexandria, with their bustling markets and grand architecture, became a familiar haunt for Mark Antony, as he and Cleopatra plotted their next move against their rival, Octavian. The air was thick with tension, as the fate of the Roman Empire hung in the balance. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE marked a turning point in Mark Antony's fortunes, as he and Cleopatra suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Octavian, who would eventually become the Emperor Augustus. As the dust settled on the battlefield, Mark Antony's thoughts turned to the consequences of his defeat. He knew that Octavian's victory would not be satisfied with simply defeating him. It would require his complete annihilation. The Roman general's mind was filled with visions of his past glories, of the battles he had won and the victories he had achieved. In the aftermath of Actium, Mark Antony and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria, where they would make their final stand against the advancing Roman forces. The siege of Alexandria was a brutal and devastating conflict that ultimately ended in defeat for Mark Antony, who took his own life rather than submit to Octavian's mercy. The circumstances of Mark Antony's death marked the end of an era in Roman history, as the last remnants of the Republic gave way to the rise of the Empire. The once mighty Roman legions, which had conquered vast swaths of territory and brought glory to Rome, were now nothing more than a tool for Octavian's ambition. Today, Mark Antony is remembered as one of the most fascinating figures in Roman history, a complex and multifaceted personality whose life and legacy continue to inspire and captivate audiences around the world. His story has been immortalized in countless works of literature, art, and film, from Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra to the epic films of Hollywood. One cannot help but wonder what might have been if Mark Antony had emerged victorious at Actium. Would he have gone on to become one of the greatest emperors in Roman history, or would his flaws and weaknesses have ultimately led to his downfall? The answer, much like the man himself, remains shrouded in mystery. A man driven by passion and ambition, yet also flawed by his own hubris and weaknesses. A leader who inspired loyalty and devotion in his followers, yet also made enemies at every turn. It is this complexity, this multifaceted nature of Mark Antony's personality, that continues to fascinate us to this day. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.